The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for clinical mental health treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 or head to your nearest emergency room. Welcome to the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, where we discuss all things mental health with an emphasis on suicide in the Black community. I'm your co-host, Jordan.
And I am your co-host, T-Kea.
If this is your first time tuning in, watching, listening, thank you so much for joining in. We appreciate you all for finding us. We hope that you find this conversation helpful. If you're coming back for another episode, we appreciate you all for your continued support. We know this is not an easy topic to talk about, but we're glad that we're, opening up the conversation about suicide in the Black community because it is so important. So as usual, we do our check-in at the beginning of every episode and also talk about our psychological fortitude. So for those of you who are new here, our check-in is basically our way of expressing what we're feeling right now, because so many times we say like, oh, we're fine, we're good, when people ask us how we're doing, but that's not really how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then psychological fortitude, this was coined by the esteemed Dr. Rita Walker, and it's basically a measure of how well we are doing psychologically, mentally, physically, etc. So it's basically a score of how well you're able to handle the challenges that life brings, with 0 being, I absolutely cannot do this right now. I have no will to go on. And 10 being, I am functioning at my highest level of self. Everything is going great. So I'll start off with the check-in, how I'm feeling today. I'm a little down today, not gonna lie, but I've been down for probably about the past almost week now. And I'm trying to get on an upswing, but it's okay. I know what I need to do in order to help that, so I don't feel hopeless or anything like that. But I have been a little bit depressed, not gonna lie. For my psychological fortitude score, I'm gonna give myself probably a good 4, and that's probably pushing it. I might be closer to like a 3. But again, it's all good. Like, I have a plan for how to address this that will hopefully give me some improvement over the next few weeks. But it's been a rough summer for your girl, but it's okay. It's okay. We're working our way through it. So, T-Kea, how are you doing today?
One of the things that I love about our podcast is that we are extremely transparent, because a lot of times when people are showing up on platforms, whether it's a podcast or no matter what the platform is, people tend to talk from the space of I have arrived and I figured it out, or that was just a season. But for us, y'all get it in real time. Like, we'll say like, this is what's going on right now, or this is what I'm overcoming, or what I came out of. So y'all can see that we talk about recovery being a lifelong process. And so that's one of the things that I really love. And as far as my check-in, because, we keep it real over here. My check-in. So how am I feeling? I'm feeling actually pretty well today. If I had to rate my psychological fortitude, which is so surprising, I'm going to give myself a good 8 today. I just feel like a lot of stuff that I was holding in, I've been able to get out. So for the past few days, I've been kind of finding my way. Black People Die by Suicide 2. It is a wonderful organization, as you all know, and podcast. But we are going through some growing pains with our organization. But overall, I can definitely give myself an 8 today. So that's our wellness check-in. And now we're about to introduce our guest, who I am so excited about. We're joined by who I have adopted as my little sister, Janiah Fields, who is making waves in the mental health field. I initially met Janiah last year at the Black Youth Suicide Academy that's hosted by SAMHSA. And we also attended the White House together for the release of the National Suicide Prevention and Federal Action Plan. Janiah is a senior psychology major and Africana Studies minor at McDaniel College. And she's deeply passionate about Black youth mental health and advocacy. On campus, Janiah serves as an EDGE mentor for first year students through the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And off campus, Janiah has worked with organizations such as the Black Mental Health Alliance and Healing Youth Alliance, and is a research assistant at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And in the fall, Janiah will be applying to master's and doctoral programs in clinical psychology. And she aspires to be a clinician and researcher focused on culturally grounded suicide prevention strategies for Black youth. So, Janiah, welcome to the podcast and give us your check in. You got to give us your PF too.
Okay. Hey everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to start by telling y'all, T-Kea and Jordan, thank you for having me and thank you for sharing your check-in because I try to scope the scenery out. I'm like, okay, what's the vibes? And like I kind of am like, this is how much I'm gonna give. Like everybody, like, oh, we're good. I'm like, okay, we're good then, okay. But like, thank you for opening the space for me to also be transparent. I would say for my check-in, at the beginning of the week, I was a little burnt out and like kind of overwhelmed. Like just a lot going on, a lot of big changes happening, getting ready for school, doing different mental health events, working full time since summertime. So just a little burnt out, but now I'm kind of trying to backtrack and slow down a bit. So I would say I was a little overwhelmed, but I definitely am feeling better now. And I would say that my score right now is maybe a 7 or 8, 7.5, 8. So pretty good, but still trying to recover from like Sunday, Monday ish. So yeah.
We're so excited to have you, y'all. Janiah is brilliant. Okay, brilliant. We're so excited to talk about you, especially with the talk with you, especially about the topic. And I always forget to mention too that Dr. Walker recommends that your psychological fortitude be like a 7 or better. So Janiah, you might not be a 10, but you're still in that good range, which keep that up. I'm excited for you.
Thank you, thank you. I
I
did not
realized
know.
I was on mute. Is it a 7 or an 8? I feel like it's an
I,
8, right? I think it's an 8 or above, right?
Is
I think, or is it 7? Either way, a 7 or an 8, one of the two.
Oh,
So you
okay.
in the window. I don't remember. We got
okay,
to check.
okay, good.
I'll
We
double
got to
check.
check.
I'll
I
make
can't
sure I
remember.
put it in the notes which one it was. I thought it was a 7, but it might just be an
You
8,
could be
y'all.
right, or maybe I'm wrong, but we'll confirm.
I'll take a window. I will take
Yes, yes,
a
you're in
window.
there.
Yes.
All right, so for today's topic, we're going to discuss sort of Black youth mental health from someone who is a youth who is studying mental health. And we felt this was important because a lot of mental health disorders will sort of manifest themselves or make themselves apparent like around the age of 22 ish. Janiah, correct me if I'm wrong. I know it tends to be the case for some young adults. For myself, I started to notice things were going left probably when I was 21 and I was first hospitalized at 22. So it's an age where a lot of people will start to notice some mental health struggles. And we wanted to talk about this because I feel like folks don't think that young people have real problems. You know what I mean? But they do. So we have someone here who's so brilliant who can give us her perspective as a young person in this space and studying to become a mental health professional. So, Janiyah, if you could tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to pursue a career in mental health.
Sure. So before any of this, like when I was in high school, middle school age, like I didn't really. think that much about mental health. Honestly, I was like a really creative kid, so I did a lot of like music, art, and I thought like I was going to be an artist, musician, something like that. But back in 2016, I lost somebody really close to me, a relative, to suicide. And I was just like, it really shook up my world. Like, it's like, I didn't have anything to say. I didn't really know how to channel those feelings. I didn't really know what to feel. I'm like, why isn't like the world stopping for this? I'm like, this like completely altered my world, but it's like everything is still moving, and it's just like really confusing to navigate, especially as somebody who's like on the brink of being like a teenager. I was probably like 12, about to be 13. So I'm like, I want to like actually do something about this. Like, I feel like I never hear about suicide in my family, in my community, on television and media. Like, I wasn't really hearing about it, or especially in people that look like me, is like kind of shameful. It's like we don't talk about that, they just passed away, we're not going to get into the specifics of it. And just how it wasn't just me being a child and not knowing how to deal with it, but also just the adults around me kind of trying to move on. But I think that we do need to take the time and kind of sit in it and think about what it actually is and let it ruminate in us, so that we can start to actually take it seriously and have these conversations. So then went to high school, pandemic hit, which in itself caused a lot of people to be, kind of stuck with themselves and really sitting in those feelings of like loneliness, or like not knowing what to do, or just the trajectory of your life kind of be thrown off. So I started a self-care club at my high school. It was a virtual club, and we basically did mental health check-ins and things like that, using platforms like Instagram and TikTok to kind of engage with students. And that's when I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to go to college, and I want to study psychology and Africana Studies, so I can kind of combine the two to help my community to start having conversations about mental health and kind of getting comfortable in that space. So went to McDaniel, decided I wanted to study psychology and whatnot. And I took my first class in suicidality. I had no idea that that was something that could even be studied. And I took it with my now mentor, Janelle Cubbage, who's amazing. And really just, she opened me up to different things about suicide in different communities, not just in the Black community, but that a lot of sub communities, minorities, have their own struggles within the idea and space of suicide and prevention. And I just was really drawn to it. So after that, being involved in like all the organizations that I was in and getting to do internship at Johns Hopkins, I really got to submerge myself in suicide and suicide prevention. And even though it sounds kind of crazy, it's like I fell in love with the idea of suicide and trying to prevent it, and understanding that it is so preventable if we catch it at a good time, if we address it before it becomes, the end of the process. Because suicide really is the end of that process, but there are so many steps before you get there, where you can reach people and you can support them. And understanding how that looks different in different communities, in the Black community, within youth, is really important in prevention. So I became really interested in that. And like now here I am talking with you guys, meeting a lot of people who want to do the work just like I want to, who are mentoring me, guiding me, and just inspiring me like you guys doing this podcast. And just trying to reach people and spread the word and start a conversation about suicide. So again, I'm really happy to be here, share my story, and hear from you guys and answer some questions that you may have about like youth. So yeah.
Janiah, girl, you are it. What's so amazing is that you saw a need when you're talking about like you started the self-care club, which is new to me. I didn't even know about that. But you saw a need and you created something. A lot of times we are feeling hopeless, we're not sure what to do, and we are often stuck. But what I commend you for doing and I admire about you for doing is seeing the need and acting on it. That's essentially like what we have done with our organization, because it people weren't talking about it. People weren't really touching it. And I get it when you also said you I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing, but you said something along the lines like, I was really drawn to it and I really love doing it, like about the whole as it relates to suicide. And like when I attended the academy last year, that's what made me want to pursue my PhD, because I was in the room with all these people talking about Black youth suicide, and I was just like lighting up and I was happy. Now that's actually a pretty morbid and sad topic, but I'm like, yeah, you're just like, that's your thing and you're drawn to it. So even asking you though, not just in terms of the work that you're doing in the field, but if you can even share like specific experiences or just challenges while you've been in undergrad, maybe something that you have overcome and how it shaped your mental health advocacy. Because I know you also talked about losing a loved one as well, but even in terms of managing your own mental health and navigating school, and not just school, because you're doing tons of things on campus as well as off campus.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that another big reason why I pursue this is because um I think a lot of the time we perceive people and we have these ideas of who people are based on how they present themselves. And I think of myself a lot in terms of those lenses and just how, I do all of this and I'm like giving back and I'm going to school and I do like pretty well in school. And it's just like, that's what people see. They're like, oh, you're not going to have any problems doing anything. Like the world is your oyster. And while that might very well be true, it's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And I think that we think of suicide and mental health in terms of mental illness, which in itself is like really stigmatizing, when anybody can be having a bad mental health day or a mental health crisis. And there are a lot of pressures and other things that can contribute to the deterioration of one's mental health, such as transitioning from college, from home, transitioning from a fairly urban area to a kind of rural, predominantly white area, which is where I go to school. Or even just the pressures of, being afraid of what failure might look like. Like for me personally, in my experience, like I've always pretty much thrived wherever I went, but because I put a lot of pressure on myself to maintain, kind of this equilibrium, this balance, like this is how I want you to perceive me as, this is where I'm going to be as, so that you don't get the chance to perceive me as anything different. And that can be kind of exhausting. And I know that that is the experience for a lot of Black women, for a lot of Black youth, that you might be your only shot at being something better, or you might be your family's ticket out, or you might be the way that your family eats. And that is a lot. And though it's not my experience, I come from a pretty supportive household, but knowing that for me, I don't have as many chances to make mistakes, that could do a lot to your mental health. And that's kind of what has been perpetuated in the Black community. You have to have a plan. You have to know what you're doing. You have to do something practical so you can get a job and you can go out here and contribute to society. And it's like, often we don't get asked what we want or how we feel, or how can we be supported. And it just can be a lot. So I know that in my experience, if I am someone who can identify with that feeling, just trying to make a space where people can express themselves, feel supported, kind of dream as well. Like I feel like our dreams are so very much stunted by this idea of practicality and being realistic, that we don't think of anything bigger, or we don't think that we can kind of shake the ground, make the ground move just by ourselves. But we hold a lot of power. And I feel like if some of that pressure was kind of lifted, we can expand our minds and think about a world where we can prevent suicide in Black youth, or where we could come up with strategies that are specific to Black youth and that actually help, that we ourselves can start making the change that we want to see in the world. So that's kind of, I hope that made sense. I hope that kind of explained where I am, but just like the idea of pressure and that being something that I just put on myself because I know what the world expects of me. I know how the world perceives me, and just kind of trying to break away from that and just allowing myself to be, and knowing that that's enough, and that when I allow myself to be, I can do really big things for my community, for me, for my family, for others that I don't even know. So, yeah.
I think what you just spoke about is really going to resonate with a lot of millennials in particular, because we were the kids that were like, you need to go to college. You need to have everything sorted out. You need to pursue something that's going to make you a lot of money. Don't do things for like passion. And I think a lot of people don't realize that if the passion is there, the success will sort of come, but we don't necessarily encourage that in our youth. Maybe things are getting a little bit better now. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. But I can tell you, for the kids that grew up in the 90s, I was born in 1990, man, go to school, be a doctor, be a lawyer. It's like those were the only things we were kind of pushed to do. And it's like, there's so much out there that we could explore. And I definitely think mental health is one of those fields, which is why I'm really grateful we have young people like yourself who are interested in pursuing. Speaking of support, what ways do you think that parents or other adults in the Black community could be more supportive toward kids or even young adults who are in college and trying to find their way as a Black person?
Absolutely. I think that I think that if you know a child, and I spoke on this at the SAMHSA panel that I facilitated, if you know a child, then you should be doing everything in your power to support them, even if they're not yours. If you know about something that is involving youth, or an opportunity that you think would enrich the youth, spreading that word goes a long way, because a lot of the time I feel like kids, they try to be cool. Like, we're cool cucumbers. Like, a lot of the time we might not ask you about things, but like if you present it to us and it's like maybe that would be something I'm interested in. So if you know about something, I feel like definitely, nudging the kids like, hey, this is something that's available. It's only but so much people can do. I understand it, but definitely like promoting these things, letting kids know, because at least they can't say, well, I didn't know about it, which is something that in my life kind of happened a lot. Like, I would be speaking with kids that maybe came from different areas or were in like specialty programs, and they're like, oh, like, have you ever heard of these scholars or this program? And they give you the opportunity to do an internship every year. I'm like, no, I had to find this internship by myself and looking it up and like trying to figure it out. And I think that's important. Like, helping these kids, like, do you have a resume? Do you know how to do this? Like, let's practice this, let's practice speaking, and just like kind of honing in their talents, because I think that a lot of people don't know what their talents are. They don't know what their purpose is because they've never had the opportunity to kind of blossom. And I say this a lot. I think that, kind of the difference between me and a lot of other kids with so much potential is opportunity. I feel like there is an opportunity gap there, and giving all kids a chance, not just the good ones, the ones that excel. The ones that talk too much need the opportunity too. If you know they talk too much, don't write them off. Put them in debate, give them communications jobs, something like that in the school, so that they can kind of hone in on those talents. Give them the opportunity to do a marketing internship or something. I know these people and they do this. I'm going to connect you with them. I think it is a lot about just having that opportunity to kind of figure out where you stand and what your purpose is. And I feel like you could do that through, I don't know, funding. Obviously, some kids, they just don't have the money to participate in these programs. Letting them know, like, oh, you could do a summer internship and get paid. And, and I feel like these are a lot of things I didn't find out till later on. Like, oh, you care about mental health and you just kind of talking about it, but you could get paid for it. That, like, will pay you to do it. And I was like, whoa, like, I thought this is just something I like to do. And they're like, no, like, you could come in a lab and you can like work on this, or you can speak at like the federal level, and like we will pay for you to tell us your story. And I feel like a lot of kids don't get that opportunity, but are more than capable of doing it. And I just feel like sewing into the kids and giving them that opportunity, giving back, once you have that platform, being like, I want you to speak, like what y'all are doing right now. You giving me the platform to speak. You made a platform and you decided to hear from me. That speaks volumes about what you're trying to do and what work you're trying to put into the future generations and preventing suicide. And I feel like that's really important and a big step for youth and supporting them.
Janiah, I was going to ask you while you were talking, do you view yourself as a mentor or a role model? I'm just curious.
I feel like I'm somewhere in between. I think that I'm still trying to figure it out. Like I'm still really young. I'm 19. So sometimes I'm like, oh no, I'm just a kid like that is going through the motions and but I feel like me being in that kind of in between is what makes me a better mentor. If someone wanted to
Hmm.
identify as that, or will make me a better mentor, because I feel like sometimes it gets kind of like I'm here and you're here and I'm talking to you. And it's like I view it more as we're here and we are
Hmm.
both capable of having like dialect that helps each other. So as
Hmm.
you mentor me, I'm mentoring you. There's like this African proverb and it's like, or it's like a phrase and it's called Ubuntu, and it's like I am because you are. And like we exist, and like this idea that every experience that we have together shapes us equally. And I feel like, yeah, that's what it is. I feel like every time I mentor someone or give advice, they also give me an idea of how I can react, or what it is to experience being human. And I feel like it's a mutual exchange. So I know it's like mentorship, and I am technically a mentor, especially at school. But it's like I'm like, we're here. I'm like, yeah, like let me hear about that. Maybe you can help me out. I might help you out, but you helping me out really. So somewhere in between, for sure.
I was just curious. Not it's kind of makes me even think about like peer support, but the reason why I asked that was because um you are like when I'm hearing, and doesn't necessarily mean that we have it all figured out or we know everything, but just in terms of what you had shared so far and the work that you have done and the work that you continue to do, it's like you're a great example that despite your age, you really can make, you can like, I know he was like, oh, the world is your oyster kind of thing. But like, despite your age, you still can make waves. You still can make a difference. It doesn't matter. You speak, when you were talking, I thought about so many things. I thought about, you talked about how parents, or not just parents, adults in general need to give children the opportunity to dream. You've been provided with the opportunity because of your life experiences. You've been able to dream, but you've also been able to pursue the dream, and you've been provided with the opportunities and provided with the community of people, like people who are always willing to support you. So there were so many elements when we're talking about preventing suicide among Black youth. It's a collective, it's a community effort. Like one person can't do it, but I think the beautiful thing about your perspective is that you have, the experience, the lived experience in reference to like losing a loved one, but then you're also working to change the field and become a mental health professional, but you're also doing advocacy work. So there's so many things that I feel like that are happening within all that you're doing that helps contribute to preventing suicide among youth.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think all of those layers are really important. I feel like sometimes when a few of them are missing, that's where kind of the disconnect between the community and the work might happen. Like, I feel like that advocacy piece is really important because it's like you want access to the community, but like you have to give back to the community. It can't just all be data and research. Like, I feel like the statistics and the experience are just as important. That data piece can, be there, but the experience of the community and what's going on, and like actually hearing those who've experienced it informs the data and makes it more accurate. So I kind of love being like kind of this like middleman. And it's like, okay, yes, I understand the research is something I really love, but I am a community member and I need other community members to build this data and this research part so that we can make everything as a whole holistically make things better. So I think that you kind of can't have good data without being connected and being in it, being in the meat and potatoes of the community. Like, you can't leave them out. You need them. You need these experiences, and you kind of need to make it personal too. Like, do you care if it doesn't affect you? You should. Don't wait until it affects you for it to be something that you want to contribute to, because it can easily be someone you care about. It could easily be you. And sometimes it just happens. You think everything's great, and then you start deteriorating, and you start being burned out, and then you start feeling hopeless, and then you get to that point. And sometimes it happens like that. You don't even realize it. But you can't wait till, it affects you to care. You can't wait till another person dies to care. I feel like we got to catch it, and we got to like really be speaking to the community and engaging with them so that we can really find a solution that's working for everyone.
Let me try to explain this and hopefully it will make sense. Like, I feel like there's an opportunity now in particular for sort of the generations before the youth now for us to do better by the current youth. And what I mean by that, like, there's this belief among some older people that, oh, the kids are so like, we didn't see all this mental health stuff when we were adults and like, I mean, when we were kids. Why do the kids seem quote unquote like weaker now? But I think the willingness of the youth to push back against like those detrimental patterns that just kind of went from generation to generation, like the kids want to be healed, in my opinion. Like, it's inspiring that so many young people are talking about mental health and they're addressing it, and I even have some little cousins that are going to therapy right now. um what ways do you think that kids being open to mental health could help older people or older generations, like help us help you, if that makes any sense?
Okay, I'm gonna try to. Okay, let's unpack that. Okay. So, what you said first, because I've heard that like people saying like I feel like everybody has a mental illness. Like, I've heard older people say that. I was raised by my aunt, and she's like an older lady, so a lot of these concepts she kind of is like, like it's too much, like, and I am certain that it's always been there. Um, I think what is the phrase like? I know now, like the youth be like same story, different font, and it's basically like how these problems have kind of always been there, but it looked different, and we ignored it. Like, I feel like there's more mental health, not because there's more mental health. It's just because they didn't want to accept it for what it is. Like, oh, they've been touched by something, pray about it. And I'm a believer in prayer. Like, I'm a prayer warrior. But also acknowledging what it is. Like, it has nothing to do with a phase. It's like this person is experiencing depression. Like, that's what it is. And understanding that it's okay, especially in our community. Like, we're surrounded by so much trauma, and I feel like we are just so desensitized to it. And speaking as a youth, I can't speak for everyone, but it's like just tired of it. Like, it forms so many barriers around me, and it's almost like frustrating. Like, I think a good example is like when I went to the White House, having a conversation with my aunt. She's like, "What are you gonna wear? Da 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 da. You're gonna get your hair flat iron when you go to the White House." And for some people, it might not be a big deal, but it was for me. In that she felt like because I was going to the White House and needed to look nice, my hair had to be straightened. And knowing how that affects people's self esteem and how they carry that, not feeling pretty, not feeling good enough, feeling like they have to look a certain way to enter spaces, when it's like my merit got me here. What I've been doing, the work that I put in got me here. And how it's almost like that wasn't enough. Like I still had to fit into this mold. And I feel like that, like I said, it affects your self esteem. It affects you in so many ways. And I've seen it affect adults, moving forward, and how they kind of judge people based on what they look like or what they're wearing or who they think you are. And they don't even know what you're capable of, or they don't even care to know. It's just like they write you off as this because that's not abiding to respectability politics, which is something that's big in our community, something that, I'm passionate about too. But anyway, just I feel like it's always been there, but it's just like kind of ignoring it. Like that's just how it's always going to be. You're black, so that's what it's going to be. And you just have to accept it and move on. But it's like I don't want to. And I feel like a lot of black kids and black youth and youth in general are like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work, and it's ruining us. Like it is just so much. So I think the best way, because I believe the question was for adults to support the youth. Was that the question? Yeah, for the adults to support the youth is to kind of give them the space to figure it out. Like, I feel like we're capable of so much, but it's kind of immediately shut down. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, it's not a lot of space to kind of express yourself. And I feel like just giving people the space to be goes a really long way, because naturally we're going to figure it out. But when you kind of like close them in and like put these barriers on them, and it's like, you know, they love you. And I understand that, a lot of adults do this because they're scared of what might happen or what they had to go through, and they don't want to see that happen to you. But I think if everyone collectively gives youth the space to just be, you know, a lot of youth are trailblazers. Like they're like, this isn't right. Okay, I want to do something about it. Like I feel like my generation, they're very much doers. Like, you see the political climate of the world, you see what's happening with Palestine and Gaza on the college campuses. Like they're out there. They're like, forget graduating. This is important. Let's sit out here. Mental health, they're like, this is important. Let's raise the money for it. And I feel like we really have it figured out because we aren't scared to do. And I feel like the generations before us really made that possible. Like, you guys they kind of suffered so that we can do this. So it's like, if you did all of this and you went through this, allow us with this newfound space to express ourselves and do the work we want to. So just give us the space and the support. You don't have to be a part of it. I know for a lot of people, like my aunt, she's be like, "Well, I don't know this new stuff, man." I'm just like, okay, let me do it, and let me tell you about it. And when I tell you about it, just be happy for me, be excited that I'm wanting to do this, and support me. And for the most part, she's learning, and she does. And sometimes she gets worried. She's like, "Is it okay if that you say this?" And I'm just like, we'll see. Like you just gotta you gotta let me see, and you gotta let me do it because it's important. And sometimes when it's important enough, it's like you worry about the other stuff later. So I think just giving that space, it goes a long way. Giving kids that space to express and do the work is really important.
Janiah, I have a question. Were you always, as you were talking, my mind is like, oh my God. But have you always been vocal about like speaking your mind and advocating for yourself? And the reason why I asked that, because it seems very natural to you?
No. No. And even now, I'm quite an introvert. Because I think a lot. Like my mind like races and I think about little interactions. I'm like, "Oop, I hope I didn't offend that person or whatever." But I know that I've always been expressive. I just am now starting to find that I can do it well with my voice. So like I said, I was like a really creative kid, and up until that point, like, I played instruments, I sang, and like people would tell me, like, you like really moved me. But I was still like, oh, thank you, like really quiet, you know, until my aunt put me in acting. So I acted at the Arena Players in Baltimore City on McCullough Street. And I really took to it because I was
Mm-hmm.
allowed to be like vulnerable and express myself, but it's like, oh, but that's not me. That's the character. But it's like that was me though. Like a big part of me was in that, and just how good it felt to be allowed to be expressive and like outwardly with my words and like feel them and evoke that emotion in other people. So I'm like, maybe I should start doing this more. And it's like, girl, like you feel this, like this is what it is. And then like imagine how many other people like feel this but didn't get to like act or express it in some way. So I think that's how I became more vocal. Like I started opening up after that. And I was always kind of like black sheep at home. Like I'm like, what are you talking about? But being able to speak to others, I think, was influenced a lot by me having the experience of being able to try on different hats of being characters. And I'm just like, these are like real feelings that I feel. And it's like, I empathize with these fictional characters because I know that whoever wrote these characters is like a piece of them in it. And I can identify with that piece of me in this character. So I think that it wasn't always like that. But like I said in the beginning, like given the space to find my talents and hone in on those talents, I was able to kind of
Mm-hmm.
find it and make it something else. So that's kind of how I'm here now. I'm
Yeah,
still
it wasn't
quiet
a
though.
question.
Like after this, like I talk for like a while, like a while, but
N-
I'm
I was
like,
curious.
yeah.
Yeah, not because the reason why I was curious was because, and well, I'm pretty sure somebody have told you this, but I'm going to tell it to you. Janiah, your voice and what you contribute to this conversation, the world, is so powerful. Like when you speak with authority and you own it. And it's so powerful. And it's so important for young people to be able to see that, but even adults. There are some adults who struggle to walk in that, and you do it with so much conviction. And I'm like, damn, girl. Like that's kind of how I'm like, yes, I'm like, talk your stuff, speak your stuff. Like that's why I asked that, because I feel so moved and inspired when you speak.
Thank you. Yeah, I think also learning like as I'm, you know, maturing in college and just in life, I understand that the world is kind of going to pick me apart regardless. And I have this idea in my head that I'm going to be very successful one day. And I know that the more that I become successful, the more the world is going to pick me apart and try to tell me who I am. So I think of all of this as practice. Like, girl, say it with your chest because they're going to try you. So say it and be unapologetic about it because regardless somebody is going to have something to say. So it's just like as long as you stand in your truth and be your authentic self, everybody who needs to be a part of your village and who wants to support you is going to see that authenticity. So I try to be very unapologetic about what I say. I also know that I want to inspire the youth, and I can't do it if I keep my mouth shut. I want them to kind of see that this is what I'm doing and that everybody is capable of this. With my Baltimore accent, I try not to code switch. I try to let people know that this is who I am. This is where I come from, and it's not all I am, and I have these experiences, and I have this voice, and I want to share, and I want to give back, and I want people to know that no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, there's power in your words, there's power in being yourself, there's power in being authentic, and that the world is going to have something to say about it. And if they aren't talking, then you aren't doing something right. So yeah.
Speaking of using your voice, what advice would you give to any young people who are also passionate about mental health advocacy and youth that want to make a difference in their own community?
um a few things, and I feel like it's a few things that we already touched on. Don't worry about the end. Don't worry about the money, the accolades, the approval. That'll all follow. If you're passionate enough about it, it just kind of happens. People sense it and they want to be around you. They want to hear you speak. And I've kind of been told that. They're like, people are like, oh, like you're so relatable or whatever. I'm like, I mean, because this is me. Like, this is what it is. I mean, this isn't all of me, but I put a good bit of myself out there when I talk to you guys, when I do events with SAMHSA or whatever. And I'm like, these are just organizations, these are just people, and they want to hear you speak. So speak and tell your truth. So don't worry about all of that other stuff. It'll come. It if it's meant for you, it'll always come to you. And that's all I want. I just want to get the word out there and what's meant for me, or if that is accolades or money or whatever, like it'll happen. But that shouldn't be why you do it. Um I would say um it only takes one. You just have to reach one person. And that goes into that passion piece as well. It's like you might not save a whole village, like at one time. Like you might not reach everybody. But if you get just one person that regains that hope, or inspire one person to do better, then I feel like you've really done your job, and you should really be proud of yourself and celebrate that. Because people are really complex, and it's really hard to like hit people in the gut off a 30-minute interview or an hour podcast, and it's like so much to unpack as humans. Me, so I think that celebrating just healing one person, or relieving them of some worries or fears about something, is really important. Because what this is all about is leaving the world better than you found it. And sometimes that's just touching one person, and just being able to be proud of yourself for that. um I would say not to give up. It's not always going to be like, oh, I am feeling 100% and I'm ready to do this and I'm always feeling good. Like, no, like I said with the check-ins, like I get overwhelmed and I get worried and stressed out very easily, because I know that I kind of am building this platform and I'm like scared of messing it up, because I'm human. Like, I'm not this like poster child for mental health. Like, I be struggling sometimes. And to know that it's that makes you better. Like, don't give up, because that makes your story more rich and relatable, and people want to hear that. People don't necessarily want to hear about somebody who's 100% all the time, because it's like that's not realistic. I feel like it's just not realistic to the human experience. Like, we worry and we get stressed and we overthink and we care about what people have to say about us, because it's just natural. It's just part of it. And I would say my last thing is like, there's no age on passion, ambition. So, no matter how young you are, you can start doing this work. I started this when I was 15, 16, and I'm still doing it. I'm going to be 20 on Friday. You start experiencing mental health challenges, trauma, all of these things as young. There is children who have died by suicide as young as age 5. So you are able to feel these things, don't let anybody invalidate it. And if you feel like it's something that you could be doing or sharing these experiences, don't let anybody take your voice away. Share it. If you're passionate about it, share it. And I think that's important. So, yeah.
Janiah, before you go, I have one question to ask. I'm curious to know, or one last question. With all that, everything that you stated, how do you practice self-care? Like, what does wellness look like for you? Because as we're in this space, we still have life happening for us and we still have to take care of ourselves. Like, it's easy to get, because you're so passionate about the work. And I'm going to speak for myself. I could just keep going like the Energizer Bunny. Well, you know what the Energizer Bunny is? I don't know if you know what the Energizer Bunny is.
I got
Okay, 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 okay. I know. I was like, she probably like, what's she talking about? Yeah, no, I could just keep going and going because I could literally do this work. I get up in the morning. I could work late weekends because I'm so passionate, but I have to keep top of mind and check in. Are you taking care of yourself and how do you feel? So I ask you the question, with all the advocacy and the work that you're doing, how do you take care of Janiah? What does wellness look like for Janiah?
I will say, with full transparency, that is something that I am still working on, because I have, like I said, that fear that, like, if I don't respond, then what if I never get the opportunity again? So just trying to train in myself to be like, if you don't get the opportunity again, then the opportunity was not for you, period. And that's hard, because you want to do everything. Like you said, T-Kea, like, this is something that I care about. So I'm like, at any chance, I want to make sure that I'm able to be in these spaces so other kids can be in these spaces. But I understand that if I'm not well, I can't talk about wellness. Kind of makes me a hypocrite almost. So it's just like, girl, you can't be promoting wellness and, like, you, like, in the hospital because you exhausted. So I would say for me, a big one is sleep. Like, really turning things off, like turning my phone off, not being on my phone, and just getting some rest. Because, like, I feel like we sleep, but our mind still is racing. And so it's not like restful sleep. So just trying to be like, just throw it all out your brain and allowing yourself to actually get some rest. That is like a big thing for me. I would say that I still enjoy being creative when I can. I like to, like, read, and I like to paint, and I like to color and journal and make crafts. I'm really crafty. So I try to do that. Um Being a normal kid, which sometimes I be forgetting. I'm like, oh, I'm out here trying to save the world. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I have friends. I'm like, let me go out and have fun and do normal teenage/young adult things. So I go out and I have fun with my friends. I love a good brunch, stuff like that, and just hanging out and really putting my phone down, no emails, no nothing. And I also really like the movies. If that was my fun fact, I think that would be my fun fact. I go to the movies at least like 3 to 5 times out the month. I really
When we
enjoy.
going? When we going, Janaya? I'm a movies girl. Girl, we
I love.
gonna link up. We
Okay.
gonna see something.
I.
That's my thing. I love the movies. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm. I feel like it's just a nice little break. It's like a forced break because you got to be off your phone. Like, obviously, you don't want to be on your phone during the movies. It's kind of quiet because, remember, I said I like the quiet. And then I just like movies. I like rating them. I like how they look. I enjoy, like, analyzing film and stuff. So I feel like that's my self care. Just little stuff, like normal stuff, like allowing yourself to not be so serious all the time, and, like, doing stuff with friends and letting my friends, talk to me and laugh and getting crabs and stuff and doing all types of stuff. So, yeah, I feel like that's how I practice self care. It's not really aesthetic. Like, I don't, drink my matcha every morning and do my yoga, but I do try to, like, take a minute to breathe and be young and chill. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Janaya. You had such wonderful insight. Anybody who's listening or watching, if you know a Black youth whether they're struggling with their mental health or not, like share this with them, so that they can hear from someone who's just like them and making such a strong impact on suicidality, on mental health, because they too can be just like her if they so choose. Um, Janiah, did you have any last parting words before you go?
Um, yeah. Um, I feel like we don't say it enough, but like I'm proud of you just for breathing. Like life is hard out here. And I'm proud of you for just waking up and doing it one more time. Because yeah, that means that there's hope for a better tomorrow, a better today. It's not a bad life, it's just a bad day. So I'm proud of you for thugging it out. Cause life is a little ghetto right now. But you know, we're here supporting you. Seek help. You know, there are people who want to support you. You know, you can always reach out. You're never alone. So just, I'm proud of you for being here and take advantage of resources like you guys. Maybe wherever you are listening, I know 988 is an option. Just seek help. Like, yeah.
For those of you who are new here, we share a spotlight on each episode that we record. And our spotlight is to highlight someone who has passed away from suicide as a way of keeping them in our memory. And we also want to bring you their stories because I think it makes the topic of suicide real. Sometimes we may feel so removed from it that it doesn't seem like it really impacts Black people, but it does. So for today's spotlight, we are highlighting Siwe Monsanto. She was a young student, a gifted dancer, a writer, and a guitar player from New York City. And she died by suicide on June 29th, 2011, at the age of 15, after battling depression and anxiety. So, for today's resource, we're highlighting the Black Mental Health Alliance, which promotes holistic, culturally sensitive behavioral health resources, information, education, training, and consultation. Shout out to the Black Mental Health Alliance. We
They're a huge
are,
supporter
yes,
of us.
yes, we appreciate everything that they've done to support us. They're based in Baltimore. They've been around for over 40 years now, and they're doing amazing work here for mental health. And for the community changemaker segment,
Yes. For the community change maker segment, it is Dr. Earl Turner, who is a clinical psychologist. And actually, before, if you're new here, I need to say that the community change maker segment, we use it as an opportunity to highlight individuals who are doing great work. Black individuals, majority of the time, who are doing great work. I'm not going to say we haven't highlighted people who haven't been Black because we probably have, but we make it a priority to highlight Black people who are doing amazing work in the mental health space. So that's Dr. Earl Turner, who is a clinical psychologist and a tenured associate professor in Los Angeles, California. He is also the founder of Therapy for Black Kids as well. And he is passionate about changing the narratives around seeking therapy in the Black community and the risk and the myths, of racism and the pandemic of 2020. He felt that Black kids and teens were being neglected from the mental health conversations, but also the need that was there, and noticing that there was an increase of stress and negativity that they were experiencing. So, Therapy for Black Kids was created to help parents with the challenges of racial injustice and foster resilience to promote healthy development. And Therapy for Black Kids operates under his practice, Turner Turner. I can't even get the word out. Psychological and consulting services. And the website is therapyforblackkids.org. And of course, you can, of course, check them out. We would encourage you to use them as a resource because our kids need the support. And so now we're getting into me and Jordan's favorite segment.
Oh
Oh
my
my
oh
God.
God.
my God, yes, This segment, we just highlight, some of the things that you may hear if you are a Black person struggling with your mental health, and you're going to hear some things. So this time, what do you have to be stressed or depressed about? Talk to me when you have bills. This is a good one for the youth. As Janiah had mentioned earlier, like, there's this idea that kids don't have real problems, and that if they're not saddled down with bills or stressed out with a job, then there's really nothing that they should feel sad or depressed or anxious about. But kids have their own lives, and they experience real things at school and their friend group, with the other adults in their life. They have things to be stressed about. So this is very invalidating. And we hear this a lot. Talk to me when you got some bills to pay. Talk to me when you got to put food on the table, roof over someone's head.
Clothes on
Yeah.
somebody's back. Stop saying that, okay? Stop saying it. If you're talking about you want to help kids' mental health, well, just know you're doing the exact opposite of that when you're saying things like that. So if you want to help their mental health, validate what it is that they're going through and do not be dismissive.
Yes. All right. Our favorite segment, self-care.
She lying. That's not her
I'm
favorite
lying.
segment.
This is not my favorite segment, but what am I doing for self-care?
Or
Oh,
plan to do.
what am I planning to do? Well, I think I'm going to get into journaling a little bit more. Um, T-Kea a couple of months ago got me this really, really nice, like, journals where you can write about your goals. And I also got another journal from her that has these, like, different life prompts in them. So I'm planning to use it. I actually showed it to a social worker that I'm currently working with, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so nice." Um, I think it'll be a good way to just kind of explore some more things about myself as I'm going through a challenging season. And I think it'll also help me sort of express my feelings a little bit more, because I tend to hold a lot of things in. I'm sure T-Kea definitely agrees. And that'll help me, process through some stuff rather than just sitting on it as I tend to do, which is not necessarily the healthiest thing to do. So that's what I think I'm going to do for self care. I'm actually going to whip out that journal and go through some of the prompts, because I've journaled and I write about, like, different things that are sort of going on, with me just from day to day. But I think it'll be nice to have, like, those guided prompts to actually follow and think about something different. So that's what I'm going to do for self care.
That's good
T-Kea?
self-care. That is actually really good. That's I'm looking forward to hearing how you feel like the journals are helping or not helping. I don't know. But I want to hear after you kind of have gotten into the groove and the rhythm of them. Um what I'm doing for self-care currently, actually I did something today that allowed me to feel the feels. So I mentioned on the previous episode that my sister's her anniversary was coming up of her passing. So it just happened. I know I mentioned on the previous episode that it was coming up. Now it has passed. It was 2 days ago. But what I did for self-care that was actually great, I had a friend come over and bring me lunch from bring me some of my favorite vegan food. So that was actually helpful and stayed with me for hours to, like, just support me. And then when that friend left, another friend came over and was like, let's go walk and get some ice cream, and then sat with me. So that was actually helpful. And what I also did for self-care was allowing people to state what it is that I needed and then allow people to support me. And it's so ironic that I want to encourage people to be open to not just receiving support where you may least expect it. And I said that I was going to do a video on this for social media. But what I mean by that is the support that I got on that day were actually from people that I met on social media. And I have been, one of them I knew for a few years now, and one of them I met earlier this year. Um, and we've been, like, hanging out, and one of them joined my gym, and we've been hanging out even more. And that is something I was like, wow, this feels really good to just kind of allow people to kind of rally around you and be there. So that is something that I did for self-care. And then what I also did for self-care when I got in from the gym this morning, I did oh gosh, yeah, it was so powerful. I did a meditation on grief. It was a wild experience. It was so wild. I had laid on the floor, like just laid out, because usually people, they'll do meditation kind of sitting up, like crisscross kind of applesauce kind of thing. But I didn't. I just laid out on the floor and I went through the meditation. It was guided. And I went through the whole, it was about like grief, and in the middle, it was so powerful. Like in the midst of the meditation, like I broke down and started crying, but it felt so cathartic. And I was like, I needed that release, because I know as it relates to grief, I do talk about it, but I know I also just hold it in a lot, because I just like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. I'll work my way through the grief. Like, girl, no, we can't do that. So that I gave myself permission to sit in it. The guided meditation was for about 10 minutes. And then after it, they just kind of walked me through actually going through to actually go from this very sacred place to actually like meeting my loved one and like having a conversation with them and like guiding me through that. It was so, I don't think I've ever had such a strong, or I don't even know the word that I want to use. It was very spiritual. That's the best way to put it. And I was like, wow, this is something that I needed. It was something that I was like, oh, I don't want to do it. But then I was like, no, you actually have to do this. So I allowed myself to kind of go inward and actually allow myself to feel not having my sister here and what that feels like. So that is also something that I did for self-care as well. So yeah, that's what I did.
That sounds very, very healing. I'm glad you had that positive experience doing that, because, man, grief is rough. And those anniversaries are tough. And I'm really proud of you for doing things that, um, taking care of yourself during that time, because it's really, really hard. Proud of you.
Thanks,
We're not
girl.
crying this episode, y'all. All right. So for the moment of inspiration, we want to let y'all know that your story and your voice is so powerful, and that you share them, or that in sharing them, you might inspire someone else to find their own path to healing. Um, I recently had a conversation with someone that I met last month about sharing their story, because they were a little hesitant to sort of talk in a group setting. And I was trying to encourage them that, it gets a little bit easier every time you do it. And you'll find that it's actually really healing to share that with other people and not hold that in by yourself. There's so much power, because you'll be surprised how people will be able to relate to you and how much they'll take away from it. So don't be afraid to share your story. Thank y'all for tuning in. Follow us on social media, Instagram, anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Share with
Leave
your
us a
friends and
comment.
family. Yes, please. A comment, feedback. We welcome that. And again, if you know a young person, whether they're struggling with their mental health or not, but maybe even a young person who's trying to sort of find their way through life, because that's a time of discovery. Share this episode with them so they can hear from Janiah. And till next time, y'all take care.